And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the presentation. I'd like to have Mary Tokarski, President, and the Board of Directors to make the presentation to Lou.
Board of Directors, where are you?
Board of Directors.
Well, that's a little too tall for me. I'm always the shortest one of the whole group. Did you notice? Huh? Yeah. Lou, we love you. That's a good thing. Can you join us up here, please? Well, we have a plaque for you, and it says, the American Accordionists Association is proud to present the Lifetime Achievement Award honoring Louis F. Coppola for a lifetime of wonderful music and dedication to the accordion, dated today. We have added Lou to our Eternity plaque so that it shows all the Lifetime Achievement Award recipients over the years. And we're proud to put Lou on for this year, for 2018. And if that's not enough, we have an AAA commemorative wall clock for you. Congratulations, Lou. Well deserved.
And one more thing. You all may notice, oops, I'm not that short. There are lots of wine bottles at the table here, and because of Lou, I did something I've kind of wanted to do all my life. I designed some wine bottle labels. And one of them is for the AAA and one is for Lou. And I want to thank Connie Raziopa for filling them with beautiful flowers, and Stephanie Myers for assisting us in purchasing these beautiful flowers for this entire room. Thank you, Stephanie. And I'd like to say something about my good friend Lou. I'm the historian for the American Accordions Association, and most of my pictures, a tremendous amount of assistance when I became historian in 2008, came from Lou, from his heart, and I appreciate it so much. And I broke a tradition of mine of never buying anything online. I couldn't find something in a small business, so I had my husband go online and get for you an Air Force wine bottle stopper for your own special bottle.
Just will sit. We'll take you along.
Are you relaxed? Oh, okay. Your brother Frank would like to come up and say a few words about the early days.
payback. This morning, if you were all lucky to come and listen to Lou give his presentation about history at the White House, it was fantastic. I was going to say almost everything he said. So tonight, I'll talk about myself. He showed how to get into the Air Force, but I'll tell you how he got into playing the accordion. He said, there was a press release that said that my mother told him he could play, and if he didn't like it after a month, he could quit. The truth is that Lou never liked to work, manual work, okay? So when he got to play the accordion, there were several things that came about. First of all, we came from a musical family, and it's very appropriate today to have the banjo playing here and the accordion, because the first instrument my brother had in his hands, and I also had in my hands, was my father's banjo mandolin. He wanted us to play that. That was the first thing, and it was not our thing. So Lou started the accordion, and I was brought up with a culture of music. I was one of the few kids in Bridgeport who knew that there were 2 C's, 1 A, and 2 O's in the word accordion. Now, those of you who play it know what I'm talking about. We also learned that there's another way of saying accordion, and that's the accordine, if you're of Italian background. Well, there were certain things that helped Lou play the accordion. Like I said, he didn't like to work. We grew up in an Italian-American family, and I attribute his success through a little bit of my participation, but our grandmother. We had fig trees, and if any of you live in the north know that fig trees don't like the cold weather. And every year in our family, those of us who were the chooch, those of you who know what I mean by that, that's in Italian the jackasses, we got in the holes and dug the ground because we buried the trees. Now Lou, I told you, didn't like work. So here was his ploy. As we were over there with gloves on and forks and shovels and whatever, we had 20 fig trees, imagine that. And Lou would say, no, I gotta go up and practice. Now, the fig tree had a significant effect in his life, just like it had in Adam and Eve's first wardrobe, you know. Anyway, there are a couple of little stories I want to tell you before I get serious. And this is great. I grew up listening to that Rambo Capriccioso over there. I heard it probably more than, well, he and I probably heard it more than anybody in this room. I grew up with that, hearing that, did Heifetz do it better? Did Yehudi Menuhin do it better? They would argue about this because all the old Italians talked about the culture and the quality of music. I grew up with it. And one of the other things I want to tell you, Lou wanted to be a chemist originally, and he and my cousin Francis, and Francis Camerino, I think it was the other person, they wanted to make erasers. Now, being a young kid, that's a difficult thing to do. So they got some tires, and they figured if you melt these tires, you can make erasers. Now, the fire department didn't quite come, but pretty close. We had smoke coming out of Bridgeport near the chicken coop. It was amazing. Anyway, that's one little, it didn't work, not at all. So Lou realized that had a little work involved in it. So he went and ran and played the accordion. So when the fire department came, all they heard was, oh, so will we on the accordion. Anyway, let me one more little note here. You took all my thunder this morning, you know. Anyway, looking through my archives, I have something here that, and it's very appropriate because this week I heard there was a special concert for an individual, but I have to read this letter. This came out of the date of April 17th, 1955. Hint, hint, hint. You don't know about this. Anyway, I'm going to read the letter, and it's actually an introduction. I'll read it verbatim and then at the end tell you who wrote it. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Your presence here today is a sign not only of your willingness to cooperate in extra accordion activity, but it is also a display of your eagerness to further the cultural aspects of our instrument. You are here today not only in the capacity of an audience, but also as participants. Yes, participants in a graduation ceremony. You, by your paid admission, are making it possible for a student of the accordion to graduate into the concert world. After today's concert, with your approval, he shall become officially a concert artist. To concertize is no doubt the leading ambition of all serious students. Not all who strive for that goal ever make it. Not all who qualify ever get the opportunity to find out if they can conquer the critics who guard the gates of the concert world. Today, that opportunity is being given to someone. It is being given to him by his teacher, Mr. Rudy Molinaro. Throughout the past years, he has taken great pains to cultivate his students' ability. These past years of hard work and patient training will serve as a good insurance policy towards the success of his students' concert debut. Mr. Molinaro presents his students in concert with these qualifications. He is the only student in the history of the AAA contest to win the Chicago and the New York Senior Solo Competition 3 times within 2 years. Today, at 17, he has the distinction of being sought after by leading accordion firms to endorse their products, and also the good fortune to possess a very mature and intelligent mind, which is so necessary to the interpretation of the master works, which he has carefully prepared for us today. This afternoon, he is reaching for the moon, and with your kind attention and cooperation, I'm sure he can make it. I present to you Louis Coppola, April 17, 1955, and I think you all know the name, Jean Etor. And there's one little thing I have to remind Lou of. My father spent a lot of money coming from he was a hardworking man, undereducated formally, but with all the wisdom in the world and all the sacrifice he gave to my sister, my brother, and myself. And he spent a lot of money on his first accordion, first legitimate big accordion. And one day Lou and he went to visit my aunt. And they had the accordion. I don't know if he was coming from a lesson or a rehearsal or what. Had the accordion in the car. And Minnie, that's right. And she's still alive. She's 98. Anyway, he came to the house and he was supposed to lock the car door. And they went and visited my aunt and uncle. And then they came out and my father opens the door of the car. It's unlocked. No accordion in the back seat. In the 1936 Dodge, you could put accordion in the back seat. He looks at Louis and goes, I told you to lock the... I mean, I think that was about a $1,200 accordion in that period of time.
A couple of days old.
Yeah, it was a couple of days old. And it just turns out the same model car was parked right behind where my father was. And I mean, how many 1936 Dodges do you find back, you know? So anyway, that's all I have to say about Lou. And like I said, it's payback time.
Good evening.
Hey,
Oh.
my turn. I'm sorry, I'm only kidding. Is that all right, Lou? Seriously.
I'm just doing what I'm told.
I worked hard on this. Yeah, so please forgive me.
This is Lou's longtime violinist, Stephanie Meyer.
One,
mine today will be a very mixed bag, and as quick as I can go, because I know you're all tired. So many people have spoken, but I couldn't resist the chance to speak about Lou. And my assignment was Lou in the Air Force and Lou in the civilian world after the Air Force. But first, I want to do this really quickly. Kyle, please stand up. Grandchild wants to go to the FBI. Lucy, sit down. Lucy, sit down. Wants to be a nurse. Ellie, I'm looking in the corner, third grandchild. Beautiful Ellie wants to go to Harvard. And they just might as well just let her in right now because she's so darn smart. And John, where's John? Number 2 son, Ashley, down John. Ashley's John's lucky wife. And John is a fine photographer, a really brilliant photographer. Number 1 in Alexandria. I can't remember who gave you that award, but he just recently got it. And also corporate headshots. Computer, there's nothing these Coppola people cannot do. And Ashley is an artist with wallpaper and paint, you just wouldn't believe it. And now John's bought a house, so he's always in the backyard. So much for his genius. Kevin, up. Kevin's number 1 son. I remember one time Rosemary said to me, with my boys, Kevin is my pride and John is my joy. She said that to me about 35 years ago, but it always stuck in my mind. And Kevin has his own investment firm about how to get your retirement right so you aren't poor. And he does very well at it. And his friend Sylvia, and Sylvia, stand up please, there's Sylvia. And also his sister. We tease Lou and we say, we finally found the perfect woman for you, Lou, but unfortunately it's your sister. And she is perfect, I really mean that. And then her husband Jim, so that you see him on the street. And then Frank, you've met, and we have one more, and that's Patty. And we just, they're married forever. And she's, the Coppola family is Kennedy-esque in their talents, in their energy, and there's somebody that we could really look up to. I have always looked up to you and your family and how they are. They're very loving and so unbelievably loving and kind to each other. It's a real example. Well, I've thought so much about what I would want to say, and the number 1 thing I would want to say about Lou, thank you so much, is when he represented our country internationally. He stood up straighter. He had the eye that took in, like they say, the Lord's eyes on the sparrow. He took in everything, everything. And he felt the mantle of responsibility to represent our country in the most noble manner through music. And he would make that music, shape that music, to call in every heart to be a part of that performance. And it was so inspiring to play with him. And so we too stood taller, and our country was greater for it in all sorts of forums. He never missed a rehearsal. He never missed a performance. He was always there, a clearly defined leader who never relaxed his standards for a second. All the time I've known him since 1970. Not one single performance with any kind of slack to it. Always taller, better, and better. And so that's how he led the Air Force, and all of us rubes who would come in and try to keep up with him. Sometimes he would play that Monty Triton so fast I would shake like this at him. There's a little performance thing there, so pardon me. And so he was clearly, the Air Force chief is only 1%, is that right, of the Air Force, so that's quite a high achievement to have achieved. Okay, the second part, when Lou went on to the civilian world, he spent 44 years at Fort Myer, first of all, playing in their dining room. And that's an awful long time. We tried to calculate how many steps that was to some birthday or another. We decided he walked halfway around the planet. And he was also at Fort Bolling for 23 years. And so he has spent a lot of time out and taught and played. This man's worked hard. So, but out in the civilian world, Rosemary was the one who went after the corporations and built a big, big business with that sort of clientele. And Lou was loyal to the military clubs, and then he went out. And could I have you stand, Mr. Seal and Admiral Sizemore? Would you just stand for us, please? These people, they paid an award for who's having played for their dinner for, is it 30 years? 30 years we got the gig. Can you imagine? And how gracious are they to come, and this is size 1 or 2, how gracious are they to come this evening? So Lou went out and set the bar high. We had experiences you wouldn't believe. And now a couple of little stories. There's got to be one where Lou didn't do something right, and I think I have the only one that ever existed. We were playing in a nursing home, and it was probably the 5th job of the day. We were playing Christmas carols. And Lou didn't really know all the Christmas carols, and he was pretty bored with the whole situation. He'd already had his shrimp and his biscuits, and he was done. So his nephew was expecting his nephew. And so the nephew calls right in the middle of the job. I hear his pocket ringing, ring, ring, ring. I'm looking at him like, if you pick that up, I'm going to kill you. So when it rings, and sure enough, oh, hi. Which nephew was it? I can't, one of them. Hi, oh, you're coming in. I said, Lou, put the phone down, you're playing a job. And he just kept talking. And then he lost where he was, and so the audience was calling out the chords for Lou. E flat, D minor. It was hysterical. I just really couldn't get in. We were never invited back. And then also there were just so many stories. But I have a surprise for you, Lou. If I can get my cell phone to do right here, you better work for me. I wrote a letter, an email, and the subject heading said, request for a congratulatory letter for a musician in the Air Force Band who played for President Bush for his entire presidency. I am respectfully requesting a congratulatory letter for Master Sergeant Coppola, blah, 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 and how he retired. I'm confident that President Bush would recognize Lou Coppola on site as he played so many engagements for the President and Mrs. Bush during the entirety of President Bush's tenure as President of the United States. We were performing at Prince Bandar's mansion in McLean several years ago at a party that Prince gave for his wife's birthday. And the President and Mrs. Bush came up to the piano along with the Carters, Katharine Graham, and we spoke for quite a while. And they all said it was the favorite thing that they had in the White House. The favorite thing was that you were playing. Jimmy Carter. Mrs. Carter said that, but everyone's going like this. Nobody disagreed. So anyway, and I described how, the strength of what they did and all this, because I was dealing with the secretary, didn't know. And in this sentence, I want to share with you, when traveling throughout America, thousands of audiences would move to the core upon hearing patriotic, Broadway, classical, European, and popular selections. The crowd would routinely stand and cheer. Standing ovations all across America, particularly in 1976, when we were celebrating the bicentennial. All these little towns, and that just brought America together. All those high school auditoriums, banquets, rodeos. It was extraordinary. And so Lou did all that. And then the other part I want to share with you that I said, I was in the Marines Orchestra, and one particularly amazing event I was lucky to play for was the breakfast after President Bush was inaugurated. Only his family came to the White House. Can you imagine you've just been elected president, and your whole family, cousin this, aunt that, they all come to the White House. And this one gentleman came up to me and said, my cousin is George Bush, and my cousin is President of the United States. He was so proud. So hopefully this would bring back some memories to Mr. Bush. So I got a letter back from the lady, and she said, I can find it. You know how good I am with this sort of thing. Well, basically she said, thank you for inviting President Bush to your event. Linda, aren't you glad that he didn't come with all that security? She said, but unfortunately he cannot come due to pardon me?
If he doesn't mind standing.
Right, we would have had Seaford. Thank you for inviting me to that. You can't come as prior commitments. But if you think a congratulatory letter would be appropriate, we would love to send one. So it's in the pipeline. I was calling this week. You'll have a letter from President Bush and President Carter. When you get a president of the United States to notice you, you've done something right. Congratulations, Lou, for a brilliant career.